Hey everyone, this is Betta from GrindExp. We're here today to show you the EB/Wand of Woe build. I'm going to show you all the items I use, the different runes I use, and the different ways you can play this build. So first off, we've got the Wand of Woe. This removes the cooldown of Explosive Blast, and you can't run this build without this wand. Now I know that doesn't seem like very much, but when you spam the Explosive Blast with the Chain Reaction rune, you can spam that, 5-6 times, and that just goes off constantly. The best part is you can cast it while moving around, so you can get a lot of DPS, and you could be super mobile while having that extra DPS. So the next item I'm using is the Firewalkers. Burns the ground you walk on, dealing 100% weapon damage each second. These boots are okay. Nothing super special. Extra damage, never hurts. Sometimes, it pops open rocks and stuff and you get legendaries, but another pair of boots you can use, there's a boots called illusionary boots, and what they allow you to do is move through creatures, and those are also very good for the build. I haven't picked up a pair yet, but when I do, I'll show you that I'll have a video out for that too. For my offhand, just using a Triumphant, extra fire damage. Notice there's no APOC on this offhand. I actually don't need APOC to run this build. I've got so much regen and so much cost reduction for fire spells that I don't need APOC at all in order to run this build. So it's pretty unique. So it's just got some crit damage, some int, some extra damage, and overall just gives my weapon a huge DPS boost. So that's why I like using that one. I'm using a Nagel Ring, extra Magic Find. Magic Find is very scarce in ROS, so when you can pick up a couple Magic Find items here and there, it's very, very good. So 83% chance. It can go up to 99, so this is still a very good roll. As you can see here, it can roll anywhere from 50 to 100% Magic Find, so an 83 is a pretty good roll. And it's got the crit damage, crit chance on there, so definitely a very, very strong ring. So I like to use that. The Hexing Pants. So when you're making this build, there's 4 items that really just mesh well together and really make the build complete. And this is one of the 4 items. What this pants does, it allows you to regen your resources by an extra 25%, and it gives you an extra 25% damage while you're mobile. If you're stationary, it actually reduces it by an extra 25%, but that is fine because we are going to be moving constantly. That's the whole point of this build, is the mobility and the damage. So these pants are very, very good for the build, and once you get a pair, you'll notice a huge increase in damage. So highly recommend getting one of these pants if you can. If you can't, well, you can still run the build, because I ran the build without it, but they definitely do help out a ton. My other ring is just a Skull Grasp. Nothing super special. Some crit damage, some crit, life on hit, just all around. It's a pretty good ring. Haven't found anything better yet, so. We got a pair of Mage Fists. These are actually a very good roll on Mage Fists. They got an extra 30% fire damage. You got some crit chance on there in fight. The legendary effect actually doesn't work. I've done some pretty thorough testing on that, and it does not double the duration of fire elemental effects. That'll probably be fixed in a later patch, but for now that doesn't work. But it's fine because it still does an extra 30% fire damage, so it's still definitely worth it to use these gloves. We've got a belt here. What this belt does is it's actually 100% chance to charm like a huge field of enemies, and it lasts for 5 seconds, and it does work on elite packs. The elite packs don't attack each other, but they do kind of wander around still, and they don't really attack you. So it's still a very good form of CC belt. It's got an internal cooldown of about 15 seconds, so it's up very often, and it's got the good stats, so that's the main reason why I'm using that belt. We've got the Bracers. Now the Bracers is kind of like 4.5 of the build. The legendary effect that makes it so every time you destroy a wreckable object you gain a short burst of speed is actually surprisingly good. When you're running rifts, you'll often get rifts that happen in the sewers or sewers of Act 2 or in the keep of Act 3. And there are a ton of wreckable objects, so you pretty much get this permanent speed buff when you're running those rifts. And you're doing so much damage anyway that you're pretty much just running by and flying through the whole rift itself. So these are good, but not essential for the build. This is another essential item for the build, though. Cinder Cloak. So increases your fire damage, reduces the resource cost of your fire spells by 30%, and if you get very lucky, you can actually roll extra explosive blast damage like I did. Now, unfortunately, this explosive blast damage is a low roll. It's only an 8% one, but it's still very, very good. It's got pretty high extra fire damage. It can roll anywhere up to 20%. As you can see there, it's 15 to 20%, so 18 is pretty good. It's got a decent intelligence roll, a decent fight roll. Yeah, again, this is a essential item for the build, and I love the flavor of the robe too. We've got Pauldrons of the Skeleton King. Nothing special. Got lucky with an explosive blast roll. So yeah, it's got a bunch of armor, bunch of survivability. It's got a okay legendary effect. I actually don't think I've ever seen that proc, but the explosive blast damage, you know, makes those shoulders good for this one. This is the last essential item I'd say for the build. Reduces your resource cost by 30% after not taking damage for 5 seconds. Now I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you combine that with everything else, it actually does make a huge difference, especially because the item is currently bugged and it will give you that 30% reduction even after you take damage. It's actually got a little placeholder buff icon, but as you can see there, it is giving me that passive reduction cost. So when you combine that, you know, you got that on top of Cinder Cloak, on top of the Hexing Pants, on top of all your other arcane regen passives, Templar that you've got. It adds up, so you can run around and you can spam that explosive blast without even costing you any resources. So that's very cool. And then my last little item here is I mainly use it just for the DPS. There are different amulets you can use, but this one just had really, really good stats, really offensive. So I'm using these ones for now. But if I got one that did like fire damage, I'd totally use those over this. So a little bit about my abilities. Right now we're just using some easy farm. We've got, normally I'd be using Force Weapon, so you got some extra DPS there. You can run Sparkle Flint and get some extra DPS there as well. And I believe I'm using Pinpoint Barrier, so while I'm running around I've got almost 2.3 mil, and that's pretty dang high. I can easily farm probably Torment 3 at this point, just spamming Arcane Blast. Now there's a couple ways you can run this build. You can either just exclusively cast Explosive Blast, but you can also, if you've got a lot of extra regen, you can actually cast Arcane Orb, and that works while you're running around as well. You can cast that. But another way you can run this build is through Elemental Exposure. What this allows you to do is, if you stack different types of elements, they apply different debuffs that make them take increased damage. So what you want to try to do with this build is you want to stack as much different type of elemental damage as you can. An easy way to do that for your ice damage is to use Ice Armor with Frozen Storm. You will lose your Pinpoint Barrier, but you do gain a little bit of extra CC, and you do get that little 11% damage aura that goes around you. Another way to get some extra damage, so obviously you got your explosive blast casting fire damage, but what you can also do is there's this amulet. 33% chance to be surrounded by balls of arcane when attacking. And this does trigger off explosive blasts, and it does stack with your arcane orbits as well. So you have two different types of damage there that is going to apply that debuff that makes them take extra arcane damage. And to get your lightning in, there isn't a very easy way to do that. What you can do is you can run the electrify weapon rune, and that will occasionally proc. But honestly, I wouldn't be too worried about that. I would just use your force weapon and be happy with the other 3 elements that you got knocked out. So that's the elemental build. I mainly just run fire though, so I use the force weapon, and I don't use elemental exposure, but I'll use depending if I need arcane power. Basically, if I'm in a group, I'm going to use the essential ancestral presence. I'm going to use that to basically compensate for the Templar's buff. The Templar gives 2.5 arcane regen, so if I need that extra regen, I'm going to use that. But if I don't need that, then I'll probably just run Dominance, which gives me basically just a defensive spell. So we'll go ahead and run that. Glass Cannon, 15% extra damage. Audacity is a very important passive. You got to have this if you're running the build. 20% extra damage to enemies within 15 yards. Very important. And Conflagration. But if you're running the elemental, you might just want to run Cold Blood. Get that extra 10% damage up in there. So when you mash that all together, you're going to get a nice sustained 2.3 to 2k mil damage using those items, depending on if you're going to go pure fire or if you're going to try to do the elemental. I think the elemental will probably end up giving you a little bit more damage boost for higher difficulties. But if you just want to farm lower levels of torment, then I would suggest running just pure fire. Okay, so we're back. I'm going to show you a little bit of how this build runs. This is Torment 2. I could probably be doing Torment 4 at this point, but I just kind of want a face roll to show you guys kind of what it looks like. So, as you can see, things are just melting pretty easily. My arcane regen isn't going down at all. The pants are giving me that extra regen and extra damage while moving. As you might have noticed, I did switch my main attack, so that's going to be Frost Nova. Frost Nova is pretty good because you can cast it while moving around. If you start doing higher difficulties, you might want the extra survivability, but for these lower ones, I'm just running the Frozen Mists. Give me a little bit of extra damage boost while I'm running around. So like this back here, I'm going to try to land that Frozen Mist right on top of all of them, and they just go down super quick. So this is one of those keep levels I was telling you about. Lots of extra destructible items on the side, so my wrist is going to proc basically non-stop for this whole entire level. Very good for clearing it out. Another thing to note is that I did give my Templar a Nagel Ring as well. He's got a 98% Nagel Ring. It rolled strength, so I didn't choose to use it. But the follower can also use a Nagel Ring as well. But those are unique equipped, so you can only use one at a time, even on your follower.
If only they could see me now.
Yep, speed shrines are very awesome. If you're running teleport, you could also use channeling. So excuse me, they're not shrines; they're pylons. But The channeling pylon removes the cooldown on your spells for 30 seconds, making it so you can spam teleport without having to wait for any type of cooldown. Another speed pylon. I've also got a conduit shrine going. The conduit shrines are nice because they also destroy objects. They target anything, so again, that's going to give you that extra speed boost from... ooh, aggro to goblin. It's going to give you the extra speed boost. Those little blue swirlies above their head, like that goblin's got up there, that's the charm belt going off. Lots of lasers, I don't really want to get into that.
I am unstoppable. Still waiting.
And just like that, we've already got the Nephilim Rift Guardian spawn. It's very efficient at killing, so he spawns very quick. And as you want to see here, I'm running around. I'm never staying still. I got to get that extra damage and resource regen to keep my explosive blast going. Yep, and that's that. Let's see what ring we got here. Got another nail ring. Definitely not better than what I was using, but I'll probably end up salvaging it. Maybe I'll give it to another follower, my enchantress. Alright, let's start another one, but this time we're going to run the element build. In all honestly, they do just about the same DPS. Okay, here we go. The little aura there, it's pretty nice because it destroys wreckable objects. Again, this is going to be one of those perfect levels I was telling you about. You got a pretty high chance to get a sewer or a keep run. It's hard when you get grouped up like that to stay mobile, but there's actually an option in your key bindings to make a, basically it's called like a force move. So even if you have your, an enemy highlighted, it's going to keep on moving, which is very good for this build. This is one of those times where getting those illusionary boots that let you run through minions would be super viable.
How does that feel?
A mighty adversary is before us.
Fire Change is actually pretty scary affix against this build. Because it's so melee heavy, you do kind of take a lot of damage against those types of affixes. But it's only Torment 2, so they don't do enough to one-shot you. Higher levels, you might want to start stacking some extra, resistance.
How does that feel? I need healing. I need healing.
Whoops. Stood in the fire. Bad Betta.
Didn't see that coming, did you?
And he's down. Now, a couple of you might be wondering, how do I get my EB to continuously cast itself? I'm actually using a Logitech G510 keyboard, and it allows you to make macros, and I have a macro that just presses 2 over and over again for me. That is not against any terms of agreement. That is what it's intended for, so go nuts with it. And I'll go ahead and show you that interface option. So if you go to Options, Key Bindings, and where is it? Here we go. Force Move, that's the one you want to hold down. That way, even if you accidentally highlight a minion, you're still going to try to move instead of like attacking that minion. So I've got that bound to my grave, and yeah, it works very well. So that's everything for the build. I've shown you the fire elemental side and the elemental side. This is the 2 best ways to run this build. Elemental maybe a little bit more for the higher end ones, and the fire just for that extra burst, probably in the lower end ones. So thanks for watching. See you next time.